Hey guys, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of two little girls. I have a 2.5-year-old toddler named Kylie and I also have a 10-month-old baby named Mia. And now that I am a mom of two, I am asked quite a lot how it is that I manage having siblings, especially during playtime. Parents of one child often find it pretty easy to manage the day-to-day needs and challenges of raising a child, but as soon as you have more than one child in the mix, there are a whole different slew of challenges that need to be met. So from one busy parent to another, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about managing siblings in your Montessori home. Now, before we jump into this, I do want to put this out there. I am only just now myself really getting into the nitty-gritty of managing sibling behavior and jealousies and conflicts and things like that, because my baby only recently started becoming super mobile and crawling around and pulling up on things and really getting into her older sister's things while we're playing during the day. So I am still very much in the same boat as a lot of you folks out there who are just trying to figure it all out as it's happening. However, there is a really fabulous book out there by Dr. Laura Markham called Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings that I 100% recommend that you read if you have a new child coming into the house, or if you already have two children and you haven't read it yet. It is incredibly helpful. All of the tips that I'm about to share with you are things that I learned from that book, and while they are not groundbreaking by any means, they are definitely more along the lines of common sense. I will admit to you that they are things that I didn't necessarily think of right away on my own, and it was nice to see them in print and to see it very kindly explained by someone else, because it just made so much more sense to me that way. And there are a whole slew of examples and very special circumstances that are described in detail in this book that are not within the scope of this video. But if you do find any of the tips that I am about to share with you, kind of the main takeaways that I constantly have in the back of my head, if any of those resonate with you, then I would highly encourage you to check out this book, because it has been my saving grace having two children in the house. And that's not to say that I do it perfectly every single time. I am a human like the rest of us, and we have human needs, and sometimes we just reach our breaking point. But the best thing that you can do is learn what it is that you should be doing, or what you really want to be doing as a parent, and always continually try to strive for that goal, so that when there are times that you do screw up and you don't respond necessarily how you want to, you don't end up spending the next chunk of your time just beating yourself up over it. You kind of recognize what happened, think about how you might have done things differently, and then move forward and try to do better in the future. So let's go ahead and jump into the couple of tips and pointers that you guys specifically asked me about in a recent poll that I put out on Instagram. The biggest word that I want you to have in the back of your mind during all of this, anytime you are interacting with your children, anytime they have a conflict, this word is the one that should be at the back of your mind and in the forefront of your mind, and that is empathy. A lot of the times as parents, we just want the arguing to stop. We just want to insist that the older child share with the younger one because we're adults and that makes sense to us. But if you take a moment to step back and really get into your child's shoes and see it from their perspective, you might be able to be a little bit more empathic and understanding toward why they're acting the way they are. Preventative maintenance is the best line of defense that you can have first for preventing some of these things from happening in the first place. And what I mean by that is surveying your environment and setting it up, preparing the environment. That's what we do in our Montessori homes, and doing so in such a way that it's set up for success for both of your children to hopefully eliminate some of the battles. The first thing you might consider doing is to make sure that activities that are meant for the older child are up at a higher level where maybe the younger one can't physically access them. So in our house, we have some of the activities that perhaps I don't want the baby getting into as often up on the top shelf, and anything that is more for her, or if it's okay for her to get into them as well, like safety wise, I put them down at the bottom as well, and then both she and my toddler can get to them equally. If there are any activities that you absolutely cannot risk the smaller child getting into, then it might be wise to also consider putting, if there are small pieces, putting those pieces into some kind of a container that locks, like the little snap lids that only your toddler or older child knows how to get open. And this way, even if the baby does get a hold of it, they can't get to those little pieces and you don't have to worry about any choking hazards or them getting hurt. And if there are any extra special toys, maybe recent acquisitions or special toys that have real meaning for your older child that you know they would become very upset if the baby got a hold of it, you might also consider keeping those toys in a special place that's maybe not out in the playroom, in the community area that everybody can access. Maybe they have a special little shelf or cubby somewhere in their room, or a space in the corner on their bed where no one else can get to it, and everybody needs to learn that they have to ask before they touch those special items. And one more thing that you can do along the lines of preventative maintenance, when it comes to jealousy of your older child on the part of your younger child, especially if it's a new baby that has just come into the house, but this could also work the other way if your children are a little bit older. If there is any jealousy involved at all, and there is bound to be at some point, you can do something called special time with your children if you don't already do this. And that is basically where you are spending a dedicated little slot of time, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever you have, every single day, one-on-one with each of your children. And you are giving them your undivided love and attention. You are putting down your phone in another room so that you're not distracted. You are immersing yourself in their world, in their play, and letting them direct what it is that they want to do with you for their special time with you. You're pouring every ounce of your attention into that time with your child and really letting them know that you see them and that there is nothing else on your mind except them in that moment. And that really makes them feel special. It fills up their emotional bucket and it lets them know that you love them. And it's just that little bit of extra something that often children need to get through the harder times where perhaps they are feeling a little bit jealous of their sibling during a different time of the day when you guys are playing together. Or if they see you constantly nursing the baby and they don't understand why. So spending a little bit of special one-on-one time goes a long way. And if you can't do it every day, maybe you're a very, very busy working family and you just don't have time during these busy evenings, I get that. But if you can even dedicate one day on the weekend where you've got a half hour to spend with that child, it will still go a long way to maintaining that relationship connection that you really need with your children to effectively manage all of these other little day-to-day scenarios that pop up. And something that I read in that book about special time that really resonated with me and I have not forgotten was, if you feel bored in the moment during this special time with your child, if you're feeling like you're bored, then you're not really present. You're not 100% there. Your mind is somewhere else. It really takes practice to be 100% present in the moment. So if you are finding yourself in that situation and you're having trouble with it, try starting to take in the little things. Notice the curve of your child's cheek, or the way their eyes are glittering and happy and excited as they're playing, or just their facial expressions in general. Notice what it is that they're doing with their hands, or how they're focusing, or any little detail that you can let your eyes fall on and really take in and observe and absorb. That will help you become just a little bit more present, and I think you will quickly find that the boredom that you're feeling will melt away instantly. And really, these are the moments that you don't want to forget. You know, they say that the days are long but the years are short, and it is so true. So if you can spend more time noticing these little small things and taking it in and really being present with your child, these are the kinds of memories that are going to stay with you for the long term. These are the things that you don't ever want to forget anyway. Something else that works really well when your older child has an activity that they want to work on, say for example, they're building magnet tiles. That's something that we do every single day in this house. So let's say the older child wants to work with the magnet tiles and the baby is now crawling or cruising, what have you, and they're just getting into the scuffle with the older child constantly over things being knocked down or being pulled apart as the child is building. And that is very frustrating for your older child. You don't want them to feel like it's okay for the baby to knock their stuff down just because they're a baby. That's again, very frustrating, and you're going to see your older child get very upset and resentful toward the younger child very quickly. So you can't just constantly side with the baby and say, oh, well, she's just a baby, she doesn't understand. Your older child is not going to see it that way, no matter how much explaining you do. So the best thing you can do then is to give them tools to problem solve. You can help your child plan ahead for what they think they might do in the event that the baby decides to come over and mess with their magnet tiles while they're building, or their blocks, or their train set, whatever the toy is. And you can steer them towards certain ideas like, do you think maybe there's some place in our playroom where the baby can't get to those things, somewhere kind of high up? And let your older child come to the conclusion, oh, maybe I can build on top of the table, or maybe I can go build on the couch or on the bench for the table, or whatever spaces you have available. If your child's tall enough, they might just build on top of your shelving or wherever it is that you keep the activities that's just slightly too high for the baby to reach. But help them problem solve, because it's not often that they come up with these ideas by themselves. They might need your help, but once you kind of put those ideas into their mind, then when it happens in the moment, they'll remember, and they might then take their project and move it out of the way up to a surface that the baby can't reach, and everybody's happy. Many times I've had to remind my toddler to do this, but she is starting to learn to remember on her own, to work on something that is special to her, is how she says it, up on the table or up on the bench long before she even starts. This way we don't have to worry about how to move the whole thing once our little tiny baby comes over and wants to get herself involved. It's all about being proactive and preventative. Let's say the baby does happen to get into something that the older child is working on, and they are having a little bit of a scuffle or having a tough time with it, and you do need to become involved. So what do you do at that point? Before you jump in, you also want to survey for a second and see if they really need you, because sometimes you might think that there's a problem going on, but really it's okay. Nobody's feelings are getting hurt. It might even be some sort of a game that they're playing together that the baby is actually enjoying. So survey first, but if it does seem like somebody's feelings are being hurt, or there's some kind of a danger, like physical safety issue at hand, then obviously you would want to intervene at that point. The first thing you need to remember is empathy. You want to be understanding and empathic toward both children's point of view, and you kind of want to almost narrate what you see happening as opposed to placing judgment on it, and help them solve the problem together. So using the magnet tiles again as an example in this scenario of what you would do. Let's say your older child is sitting where I am, right in the middle of the playroom. They're working on building something. They didn't take it up to the table, and the baby is now coming over and wanting to get involved, maybe reaching out and pulling some of those magnet tiles off, or otherwise knocking down the structure that they've created, and your toddler or older child is becoming agitated and upset about it. You are not going to swoop in and say, why don't you just share it? You have 30 pieces of magnet tile. Why can't she just have one? You're being selfish. You need to share with her. She's your sister. You need to learn to get along. All of those things that we are naturally inclined to say, because that's how most of us were raised, are actually not what you're supposed to say. And it only makes your child feel more alienated, the older one, and resentful toward the younger child, because they will feel like you are taking the younger child's side, even if that's not really where you're coming from. Again, see it from their perspective. A better way to respond would be to come over and say, I hear two kids crying. It looks like you're playing with your magnet tiles and your baby sister is coming over and knocking it down because she wants to play with you. Then you can empathize with your older child for a moment and say, that must be really frustrating when your baby sister is constantly knocking your stuff down. Hopefully at this point your child will respond with, yeah, I really don't like it when she does that, or something along those lines. So this is your first point of connection. You're showing your older child that you understand their point of view, and that you're not siding with the younger child, but you're also not blaming the younger child and telling her what a bad little baby she is and that she needs to go away and stop knocking down her big sister's things. You're not placing blame on anyone, really. You're just passively observing and describing what it is that you see. The next thing you want to do is to help your children problem solve, especially if they're a little bit younger. They will need your help with this. So usually at this point, this is where I will either suggest to my toddler, is there a place we can maybe move this project so that Mia can't get into it? And sometimes she will say, yeah, let's move it over to the table. Or yes, I'm gonna go over to the dining room table bench and work over there. Sometimes though, because I'm not giving her all of the answers, she will come up with a solution that surprises me and say, here, Mia, you can have this one. And she'll give her a piece of Magnetile that she's okay with the baby having. And that's a perfectly acceptable solution as long as it works for her. If it is something that she doesn't want the baby to have, she's not willing to give up any pieces, and the baby actually has a piece in her hand, our next line of defense is usually to try to make a trade. And this is something that you do have to teach your older child. I'll say to her, it looks like she really likes that Magnetile, but maybe there's something else that she might like to trade that she would like even more. And Kylie will usually run over to something that she knows that Mia really likes, like one of the little animal figurines or one of her activities on her shelf right over here, and she'll bring it over for Mia to play with instead. And as soon as Mia drops the toy that was in question, like the Magnetile, she'll grab it and go back to what she was doing. And many times that is just the easiest way for us to solve things. So teach your older child how to trade, especially when the baby is much younger and a little bit more easily distracted. This doesn't always work. Sometimes Mia is very insistent on keeping whatever it is that she has, but it does work sometimes, and it's always worth a try in my book. Now let's say that the baby has the object in question, does not want to give it up. The older child is very, very agitated and wants that toy back, and you now have two children that are upset on your hands. You can't just say, well, let her just have it for 10 minutes and suddenly become the referee. You don't want that job. You want your children to learn how to take turns and how to respect each other's things. So what you need to do at that point is respect your older child's right to continue working on what they were working on, and you need to very gently and calmly but firmly get that object back from the baby and say, it looks like big sister was working with that Magnetile right now. Here, we're gonna give this back to her. And of course, she's going to get very, very upset over it when that happens. It's come to be expected. But at that point, again, empathize. This is the biggest tool that you have. You can then empathize with the younger child and say, right now it's Kylie's turn to play with the Magnetiles. I know you really want to play with that Magnetile right now, and I know it's so hard to wait, but I'm gonna help you wait. Let's go see what we can play with while we're waiting. And then you actively take the younger child away. You perhaps look for some other activity to do, and you almost kind of distract them in a way. I don't want to use the word distract, but that's kind of what you're doing, but you're helping them wait their turn. And they very well might spend the next couple of minutes looking over their shoulder longingly at whatever the toy was that they really wanted. But as long as they can see that you as the parent are there to help them wait, you're on their side, you're in their court, your older child is also happy because they see that you've got their back. You're not gonna let the baby just come over and destroy all of their things. You have met the emotional needs of both of your children at the same time. Generally, there is going to be a little bit of crying involved when one child has to wait their turn, but that's just how it is. And that's part of your job as a parent, to coach them and teach them that it is really hard to wait sometimes when you really want something, but you can wait and you can get your turn after you've waited, and it's okay. You'll be okay at the end. This is all part of that emotion coaching and that positive discipline that we so strive for in a Montessori environment. So on that note, you should never force your children to share their toys. If your children are constantly looking to you to be the deciding factor as to how things should be shared, then you're constantly going to find yourself in the middle as the referee, and I'm sure that's a job that none of us really wants. What we want is to teach our children how to take turns and how to advocate for themselves. So in any situation where a child wants to play with a toy that another child has, then you simply need to go back to this whole idea of turn taking and say, okay, Kylie, it looks like you really want to play with this toy that Mia has right now, but right now it's Mia's turn and it doesn't look like she's done with it yet. So you need to wait your turn. Let's go over here and see what we can do while we're gonna wait for our turn. And even though if you're doing this with a younger child, like if your baby is the one that wants the toy really badly, they might not 100% understand what it is that you're saying, but they get your tone, they get your emotion behind what you're saying, and they can feel that you really do understand them, and eventually they will begin to understand what it is that you're saying. So if I were you, I would still be using all of the same words, even with a much younger child. Okay, sorry if the camera angle changed a little bit. I literally just finished filming and thought of something else that I wanted to make sure I mentioned, but I didn't write it down this time, so I forgot. So I turned the camera back on. But in the moment, if your child, let's say the older child snatches the toy from the younger child, or even the other way, if the younger child snatches it from the older one, instead of you being the referee and making making a value judgment and saying, that was really mean, why did you do that? Or how could you do that to her? She's just the baby, or whatever, you know, however you would normally respond. Instead of doing that, because that automatically assigns blame and judgment and makes either one or both of your children start to feel more resentful toward both you and the other sibling, the better way to respond is always to focus on the consequence of that child's action on the other child and draw their attention to that. So for example, if Kylie snatches a toy out of Mia's hand, I will often turn around and say to Kylie, Kylie, look what happened. You snatched that toy out of Mia's hand and look, now she's crying. She's really upset. That made her really sad when you did that. I want her to notice the consequences of her actions. I'm not saying you're bad, you're mean for doing that, but I am drawing her attention to the fact that what she just did caused her sister to have a very sad and negative reaction. And the more you can do that, the more your children are going to become cognizant of the consequences of their actions on other people. And that's really what you're after here. So if snatching toys between your children is becoming an issue, you can instead empower your children to learn how to advocate for what it is that they want. So first you want to teach them that they don't just snatch toys. They need to walk over and say, hey, are you done with that? I'd like to take a turn. And if the other child says, no, I'm not done with my turn yet, you can have it when I'm done, then that child has to learn how to be respectful of that boundary and not take the toy. They have to wait. And like we were saying earlier, then you might have to help them wait. It might be a little bit difficult for them, but they do need to learn how to use their words to ask for something as opposed to just snatching it away. In the case where a younger child might be coming in and destroying something that an older child has created, the older child needs to know that they can always count on you to have their back, basically, and that they can call on you whenever they need you to help run interference, basically, on the baby. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So what I have taught Kylie to do is something that I believe in the book, it's called the Mommy I Need You game, and that's basically what she says. Anytime she sees Mia kind of crawling over and getting ready to get into something that she's been working on and she doesn't want her messing with it, she'll say, Mommy, Mommy, come quick, or Mommy, Mommy, I need you. And in the moment, I do my best to stop whatever it is that I'm doing if I'm not already in the room with them, like if I'm doing dishes or something, for example, and I try my best to stop what I'm doing and come right away and help make sure that Mia is not destroying her stuff. This way she has confidence that I'm respectful of her needs as well, and that her needs are just as important to me as the baby's needs. With that said, there are times that I can't get there right away and Mia does destroy some of her things, and that's where we end up using some of the other tools for how to handle those conflicts, but I do try my best in the moment to get there whenever I can. And for all of the rest of the times, I really rely on that preventative maintenance of having Kylie work on those special creations somewhere that the baby can't reach it, so that perhaps this doesn't happen quite as often. And finally, the last part of having siblings in the house that I'm often asked about, that I wanted to make sure I touched on in this video, was just managing siblings in general as far as my time goes as the parent. And generally what I find myself doing is just sitting with both of my children. Often my older child will be very engrossed in some specific project that she's working on. She might be across the room up on a table working on it, or she might be right on the floor next to me. I'm usually trying to engage the baby on the other side of me with some other type of activity or toy that she has. I don't ever force my children to play together unless they want to and it's organic and they're doing it on their own, because that doesn't really help anybody and it could actually create some resentments between the siblings and a little bit more competition when all is said and done. So I don't force them to play together, but sometimes they do. A lot of the play that they do together right now is something called parallel play. So they're playing next to each other. They're kind of noticing what each the other is doing, but they're not necessarily playing together yet. That's something that comes a little bit later in the preschool years as they start learning how to form social bonds with siblings and other children their age. So yeah, I'm basically just kind of managing both. I will engage with Mia if she's off to this side and talk to her about what it is that she's doing and say, oh yeah, look, you're holding a cow, or I'll maybe do one of the balls on her ball tracker with her, and then I'll come back over here and turn my attention back to Kylie, who's working on her magnet tiles. Sometimes I have to help with conflict resolution if Mia decides to stop what she's doing and go over and interrupt whatever it is that Kylie's doing and Kylie doesn't like it. It's kind of like a balancing juggling act, basically. And Eventually they will get to a point where they will start playing together more, but right now it's more so just me being there with them and engaging with both of them at the times where it seems most opportune. And it doesn't mean that you have to jump in and make a comment, you know, it one side, this side, one side, this side, and juggle back and forth like that every 5 seconds. That's very tiring. A lot of the time I will just sit back and I'll watch what one of my children is doing while I kind of play passively with the other one, or I'll just watch both of my children and see how they're interacting together. There really is no one black and white, easy, like this is what you need to do answer to that question, which I know is what so many people probably really are looking for. But honestly, it's life, you know, it's not something that you can put into a book and it works out perfectly every single time. You do have to feel it out, and it is dependent on each of your children's temperaments, and a lot of those things come into play and ultimately determine what play looks like in your household each day. But I do think that if you implement some of these tips as far as being empathic and understanding and enforcing turn taking as opposed to sharing, and helping your children learn how to wait when they do have to wait and coaching them through it, if you can do all of those things, you will find that regardless of your ages of your children or their temperaments or their genders or their background or the environment that they're in, regardless of all of those things, it tends to go a little bit more smoothly that way, because you are not the referee that is doling out all of the decisions and consequences. You're teaching your children life skills as far as how to advocate for themselves and how to politely and courteously interact with other people. And you know what? There are moments that are tough where you will find yourself having to emotion coach both of your children. They're both going to be crying at the same time over something, and you just have to make do. You have to use the tools that you have. You have to try to be empathic, try not to point fingers and blame each of the other children so that they don't feel like they're being ganged up on, or they don't feel like you love them any less because you're letting that child do this or have that. You always want them to feel like they have 100% of your love, regardless of what the situation is. So if you have to emotion coach both of your kiddos at the same time, it might make you feel like you're about to pop, about to go crazy. But if you can just take a couple of deep breaths and embrace the chaos and remind yourself that it is fleeting, it is just a moment in time, it will come to an end. It's like a roller coaster, that it will be okay. Then you might find it a little bit easier to get through those couple of minutes, and everybody else will be better for it when all is said and done. Now, if you are wondering about some of those more specific situations where perhaps physical safety is involved, a child pushes their sibling, or they hit or bite a sibling or do things like that, you're actually going to use most of these same practices. The wording will obviously be a little bit different because you're addressing a very different type of scenario, but the ideas are still the same. If you do have a lot of that type of aggressive behavior in your house and you are looking for some more specific dialogue for how to address those situations, then I would urge you to check out that book that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Peaceful Parent, Happy Siblings by Dr. Laura Markham. I will be sure to put a link in the description box down below so that it's easy for you to find. If you guys are looking to see any of these types of situations and scenarios in action, I did not put any of them in this video because I truly try not to make a habit of following my children around when they're in the middle of a scuffle with a camera. I feel like it's an invasion of their privacy, and it doesn't really allow me to be as present with them as I need to be in order to emotion coach them through the situation or help them problem solve. So that's why you didn't see anything like that in this video. But if you are interested in seeing kind of our day-to-day interactions and what it looks like when I am playing with both of the girls at the same time or when they're playing with each other, we do family vlogs every single week. I post them on Mondays, and in those family vlogs, you often get to see glimpses of us playing in the playroom or my girls interacting with each other. So if you are not already watching our family vlogs, then I encourage you to do so, because that is really the best glimpse into what our normal everyday life looks like. If you have any suggestions that you feel are in line with positive discipline and they work in your Montessori home for managing siblings in any aspect of setting up the playroom or their interactions with each other, then please be sure to share them in the comments with us down below so that the rest of us can benefit from them as well. And just in case you are new to my channel, I did want to let you know this video is part of a much larger series called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori philosophies at home with your children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.